So today we're going to continue working on a WordPress site, and actually I'm going to start with a new site. So I've got a new WordPress installation here, and I'm also using a new hosting provider. So that's 000 webhost. So you can go to 000webhost.com, and this service is completely free. They do put some ads in this WordPress area, which I've disabled using a browser extension. But other than that, it's completely free, and it's probably much more reliable and definitely faster than the previous service that we used. So you might want to give this one a try. You can also continue working with your previous installation, assuming that there are no problems. But I'm going to start with a completely new site and a completely new theme. So I'm going to go over some things that I covered previously, but I will also go more in depth discussing or adding some other functionality. We will look at some more features and also add some plugins. Okay, so first I'm going to install a new theme, because at this point, when I go to my site by clicking here, it's very basic. It's got this basic theme. There is no content apart from some sample content here. And it looks very basic. There are no images. So I'm going to start by installing a theme. And the theme I'm going to install is a little bit business oriented. So it's a theme for websites which are good for businesses, companies. So we'll go in that direction a little bit. So going to appearance and themes. So this is the theme that's currently applied. So it can look much better, as you can see, if you customize it. But I'm going to look for a theme. So of course, first we need to click on Add New. And I'm going to search for a theme called Avoca or Avoca, however it's pronounced, right? So you've got this theme here. And you can see that here the description is responsive business theme. So let's install it. The theme actually has some issues. So some themes do have some issues, but you can just get around them or just not use certain features. The reason I'm installing this theme is the fact that it's pretty good looking. It's business oriented, so we can later add some business functionality. And it has a lot of features. So it's very customizable. And we will also see how the options for this theme differ from the options for the previous themes we worked with. So we will see that the theme itself allows for different kinds of options. So it also adds its own options and so on. So I'm going to activate this theme. Okay, and we can have a look at what the website looks like after applying. So you can see that it already looks a lot better. So basically it applies this basic template. So it looks pretty much like what we saw in the screenshot. So let's look at the options here. I'm going to click on Customize. And you can see that we've got some of the options that we've already seen in the other themes. So we've got some general options, although you can see that you've got a few more features here, like selecting a skin, which sadly doesn't seem to work. So that's one of the things that doesn't really seem to work. So when I select these, nothing changes, right? So there's something wrong with this feature, but we don't necessarily need it, and it won't break our website. So we can, of course, customize the colors on our own if we wish. So we've got menus, widgets. So these are standard menu items. Additional CSS, which we'll look at later, as a matter of fact. We've got some logo selection settings. We have header and header or slider options. So it's this area which we can customize. And we've got some layout selection settings, and this is important. So here you can see how customizable this is, because in fact this theme added this option to have a choice of layouts. So the website can look quite different depending on which of these you select. And what's more, when you go back here, you can see that you have separate settings of these different types of layouts, right? So we've got B1 or Business 1 settings, Business 2 settings, Business 4 settings, Ecom 1 settings. So if you go here, you can select these different layouts, and then you can customize each of them separately in these settings. So if I change this to Business 2, for example, you don't see anything at first sight, but when you look here, I'll go back to Business 1. You can see that this is the layout, at least on a regular computer screen. And this is a slightly different layout. And here we have a layout with those 4 columns here, or 4 cards, right? So slightly different. And this e-commerce 1, that's what it's called. And it's different. There isn't much to see, as you can see, but it seems to be a very simple layout. So of course you would have some headings and some text here, right? Okay, I'm going to go back to Business 1. So we'll be working with this Business 1 layout. And if you go to B1 settings, you can see that you can customize those individual areas. So you have the B1 welcome settings, where you can change the headline and the welcome text. So it's basically this title text in the title area. You can't see it now. So let me just perhaps publish this, though I haven't really made any changes. But if I close this, you can see, because I've already changed this title, I will actually modify this, because this is really just the address, or part of the address, but I of course want these to be 2 separate words, possibly capitalized, and I want to change this text below as well. So that's where we added that. For some reason you can't see it here, in this view, but if I go to of course, we need to first work with the site identity. So this is not related to just this layout. It's about the basic elements of the website. Right, we can also have a site icon. Right. So that's what it looks like now. I think it looks okay. The good thing about this theme is the fact that you have all these explanations, right? So this sample text in each area gives you explanations on how to modify the given area, right? So for example, here you can see select a menu to appear here in dashboard appearance menus. So you've got instructions inside this layout or inside this sample website. Or here, for example, you can change this text inside slider 1 settings tab of theme options page. So you know where to change, where and how to change these things. So let's try to add some content to this website. So first of all, we need some pages. And then we will be able to create a menu here, which will point to the individual pages. So let's start with the pages. Of course, you can go back to the dashboard, but you can just as well hover over this plus new button, and you can actually add pages here. Okay, so let's create our first page. So our first page will be called Home. So this will be the home page. We already have a default page, but we're going to change that. We're going to have a proper home page where we will put some content. So of course we could put some dummy content like lorem ipsum or something like that. But today I'm going to use some content from the web. So I'm just going to type web development. And let's just copy something from Wikipedia. Okay. Of course, when you copy content from somewhere else, you have to make sure to give credit or to indicate where the content was taken from. Right? So you can see that it's been pasted with all the links and everything. And of course, you can edit that. You've got these blocks. You can add more content. You can move this around with these handles and so on. So we'll look at that later. But now we have some content on the main page. So let's preview the page first. And you can see this is just the content. And all the links and everything is here, but of course the styling changes the look of this. So for example, you can't clearly see the links until you actually hover the mouse over the text. Okay, so that's the preview. But of course, this is not live until we've actually published it. So we click on publish. Of course, you can change the visibility here. So you could make it private if you're working on some content that you don't want to be seen yet, basically. So you would select private, but we are not worried about that now. We can make it public immediately. We can also schedule the time where or when our page will be published. Okay, so let's just publish it now, and we need to confirm. Okay, we have the page address, so of course it adds the title of the page to the address after the /. And now we can move back. So we've been taken back to the dashboard. Let's go back to the website. And of course we don't see our page yet because it's not in the menu, and also it's not set to be the home page. So when we actually physically type /home, you can see that we've got our page, right? But other than that, other than through the direct address, it cannot be accessed from here, right? Because we have no links. This is not set to be our home page. So let's do that. Let's set this page to be the home page, because just because we called it home doesn't mean that it will be treated as a home page. If you remember, in our previous site, the About Us page was set to be the home page, right? So it's not about the name, it's about the function. So you can select a certain page to be the default page. And if you remember the HTML classes, the index.html file was normally the home page. So that's the page which will be opened if you type just the address of the website. So if I add home here, it will still show, but I will not need to do that. If I just type the address, this will be, that page will be shown, right? So it's basically like creating an indexed HTML file, and inside that file, setting the title attribute in the head to, for example, home. Okay, so let's go to customize. And we want to go to the homepage settings here, right? And you can see that the default for WordPress is usually your latest posts. So if you have a blog, then there will be a page with the posts, the blog page, and this will be the default page or the home page. But we want a static page. And of course now, since we've created that home page or a page with titled home, we can select it. Of course, we could select any other page if we had any other pages that we wanted to be the home, a home page or the home page. Okay, so I'm going to publish. Okay, and you can see that we're here on the home page. So this is now the home page. If I refresh or just press enter with the website address, the pure website address, then of course we will be taken to this home page. So let's continue adding pages. But first I'm going to change the title of the website, because I've thought that it would be easier to work with a subject such as web development, because then we can have individual pages devoted to individual technologies like HTML, CSS, or even to WordPress. So that will help us to illustrate certain things more easily. So let me just change the site identity. I'm going to change that to the name of the subject. Okay, and we need the tagline. Perhaps with a capital B. Okay, we should also change this little icon, because I've experimented with a white flag, but it didn't quite work out. So perhaps we should look for something which would be appropriate here. So let me just search for web technologies on Google and look at images, whether we will get any nice images that we could use. Of course, ideally, if we don't purchase an image, we should look for images that have the usage rights set to labeled for reuse. Or let's just use Logo Maker, because surely they will have some icons for web development. Okay, so let's just use a kind of globe. As simple as that. Of course, I could change the color to match the website colors a little bit better. So let me use a color picker tool. And actually I have on my panel here, I've got a color picker, so I can just pick a color like this one. And if you have some graphics application, you can just use that to pick a color from the screen. Okay, and I'm going to get the code of that color. So probably this hexadecimal value. Okay, and you can paste it here. Okay, so it's this kind of purplish. It actually looks brown, but it is actually a very dark purple color. Okay. And let's save that. Okay, but that image will still be too large, so I'm going to scale it a little bit. So I think the default value is 16 by 16, but it depends on the resolution of your screen. So it's perhaps safe to have something like 28. Okay, and I'm going to export it as, and let me call that simply favicon, which these little icons are usually called, .png. Export. Right, of course you have to make sure that the transparency is enabled. Okay, so we need to change the image here, upload files, and we have this little image here, and select, and skip cropping. And we can see that we've got this nice little globe here in the corner, and we can publish that. Okay, so let's continue adding pages so that we have something to work with, and we can create a menu. So I'm going to close that, and I'm going to create a new page. So the next page will be HTML. And again, I'm going to copy and paste some content. And I will also put an image here. Okay, so let's just type in HTML in Wikipedia. And you can see that we have this nice image which symbolizes HTML, or at least its current version, which is HTML5. And what's nice about this image on Wikipedia is that if you click on it, you can see that this has the SVG extension. So apart from JPEG files and PNG files, and also GIF files, this is another format that is commonly used on the web. The good thing about it is that it's a vector format, which means it can be scaled without limitations. It will never lose quality, because this is a kind of image that's described with some data, basically some mathematics, right? So it's not an image consisting of pixels like a photo, but it's an image that's described with these mathematical data. So it's usually a lot smaller than a regular photo, for example, but the advantage is that it can be scaled as much as you want. The disadvantage is that WordPress installations or hosting providers don't always accept those images. So unfortunately, we won't be able to put it here, not in the SVG format, because it will just block it. We will get a message saying that these types of files are not allowed. And the reason for that is security, because this is a file that has some code in it. And probably it's possible to use it to insert some malicious code into the website. So there is that risk. So of course you can use these files if you have your own server and or just a paid server where you have full responsibility over your website, and you know what kind of images you're putting there, you know where they come from, and so on. But these services often don't allow this, so it wouldn't be possible, because I've tried. It won't be possible to insert this image here. So we're going to use it anyway, but we'll just convert it to a regular PNG file. Because we need the transparency, but we'll convert it to a bitmap. So basically a regular image that consists of pixels. Okay, so I'm going to save that. And we can modify the name a little bit. We don't need such a long name. Okay, so that's the first one. And I'm going to search for CSS as well, because we'll need it later. Okay, and I don't see that nice image for CSS. There is something like that, but there is also a nice image similar to the one that we saw for, or that we found for HTML. So let me just type in CSS image perhaps. Yeah, that's the image. It would be nice to find some reliable source like Wikimedia. Let's see what this one is like. Well, let's try and view the image. In new tab. So that's actually a PNG image already. And this, of course, is 3 and stands for CSS3, which is the current version of CSS. Okay, so let's just use that. It's not so important. This is just for demonstration. So let's call it CSS. Okay. Okay, so we have the HTML, we have the CSS. So let's now open this CSS file. I'm sorry, the HTML logo. And you can see that when I try to open it in GIMP, in that graphics application, it wants to convert it, to render this as a bitmap image, because it recognizes the scalable vector graphics image. And then you can actually specify the size, because SVG has no specified size, right? So you can make it any size you want. So I think we can have something like, let's look at the other one. But the other one, what dimensions the other one is. It's 512, but it's got a lot of this padding area around it. So let me first open that one actually. And let's crop this to content, crop to content, which means it will make it as big as it needs to be. And then when we look at the size, it's 219 by 250, so we can also make this other one similar. So let's make it 250 by 250. Okay. And I'm going to export that as a PNG image. And I can overwrite that image after the changes have been applied. Okay, so we have the two PNG images. We can go back to the website. Right. So let me first insert that image. So of course we can insert those blocks. We can insert the content that we want. We have all those different blocks that we looked at previously. And of course here we have the image option. So we can upload an image, and I'm going to select that PNG, HTML5 PNG file. And here we have it. And let's add some text. So the text again will come from, let me just type in what is HTML. Okay, and we could copy something from W3 Schools, though there isn't too much text here. So let's look at Wikipedia. Oh, that's not Wikipedia. That's Wikipedia. And again, let's just copy a few paragraphs from here. And we can add a paragraph. Okay, so that actually adds a few paragraphs because it recognizes that these are separate paragraphs and they are treated separately. So we could, for example, move them around, format them differently, and so on. Okay, and when I look at the image, we might also want to center it. Align center. We can preview that. And we can publish it. Okay, let's quickly create another page. So you can use this menu, you can use this button here, new page, and let's call it CSS. And let's insert that image again. Okay, and let's center it. And then we can add some text, a paragraph. And let's search for CSS. And I'm going to copy that and paste it here. And let's just publish that. So add a new page. Okay, and let's get some content. And remember, if you copy any content from websites, you should remember about copyright and giving credit to the author. It's not such a huge problem with Wikipedia, which is quite open. But if you copy from other websites, you should always, probably in most cases, you would need to ask for permission, or just paste the text and indicate that this is a quote, that this is pasted from a website, and you would give the address of the website, obviously. Okay. Right, so let's just copy. Well, that's the problem with some web pages, that it's hard to select without selecting things which you don't want to select. Okay. So you can see that it also automatically assigned these heading elements to the headings, because of course this is copied from a website, so the website has those HTML elements, H1, H2, H3, P, and those different types of content. So when you paste it, it just puts these into the appropriate blocks. So these are separate blocks that you can edit, style, and move around as well. Right, so this is, for example, H3. That one is H2, right? Because these are like the main sections, these are subsections, and so on. But of course, we should give credit. So we should add a paragraph which explains where this is taken from. This is a quote, which of course serves a different purpose. But just to play around with this, we could put the information here in a quote, which perhaps is not the best idea, but just demonstrate how a quote works. So this is the website shivaweb.com. Right, and we can see that we've placed it here, but that's not a problem. We can just move it to the top like that. So let's publish that. Let's view the page. Right. And finally, let's add the contact page. And we'll add a form later. Okay, and we'll leave that blank because we will add a form. Of course, we first need to install the add-on for creating contact forms, or any forms for that matter. Okay, so let's now, because the main problem now is that we have all these pages, but we have no way of accessing them, except, of course, typing the page name in the address bar, which, of course, is not what we want. We don't want the users to have to guess what kind of pages we've got. So we need to have a menu. And of course, the way to edit the menu is to go to the dashboard, appearance, menus, although this should also be available. The menu editor should also be available in this customize tool. So we've got the menus here, right? And we can create a new menu, which will be automatically assigned to this area, I believe. Right, so yes, so we have the menu location and we only have one option. Right, so this is the primary menu here. We need to give it a name. Of course, this name will not be seen on the website, but this is just to identify this menu. If we wanted to add some other menus, you would give them different names. Right, and we can add items. And we have these pages here that we created. So we need to add the home. Then we've got the HTML, CSS, domain hosting, and actually I forgot about WordPress, but let's forget about WordPress for now. And yes, so we've got these items. We can of course rearrange them, but this should be the correct order: home, HTML, CSS, domain and hosting, contact. Okay, and we can see it here, but of course, because this window has been shrunk, this doesn't look very good. Okay, now when we close that, we can see that we've got a slight problem, right? Because we have too many items, or at least we have some items which are quite wide, like this one. So the general problem is that the menu is too wide for this area. And in order to do something about this, we would need to modify the theme somehow. So we're not going to go into modifying themes, but there is one feature which you may have seen in the Customize menu, which is called Additional CSS. So, of course, things like layout, size of elements, fonts, and so on, this is defined by CSS. So we can actually add some CSS by targeting some elements on the page and changing the styling. So we could, for example, decide that these items should be smaller in this particular menu so that all of them show up in one row, right? The problem is, of course, that we need to know how to target them. We need to know what they're called in the HTML and in the CSS. So how can we do that? And this is something that is quite useful if you want to do any web development and if you want to modify items on a page, or at least examine items on a page, even if it's not your own page. So if you're on any page on the internet, you can look at, of course, you could look at the source, but the source will just show you, because if you right click here, you can always view page source, right? But this is a bit daunting, right? So unless you're quite an advanced developer, you wouldn't want to really analyze this. And the other problem is that you don't necessarily know what all these things refer to on the page, because you don't see the page, you don't know which item refers to what on the page, right? So this is, of course, useful to just look at the code and see what it contains, how the page is structured, what kind of scripts have been used, and so on. But if you actually want to interact with this page and see how it's structured and what the CSS is, what the HTML is, you need to use this other option, inspect. So depending on your browser, this should be available by right-clicking on the page. There is also this shortcut F12. So on a laptop, that will usually be this function key Fn plus F12. And this shows this sidebar with all these options. But when I right-click and do inspect, the result is the same, except that the item that I right-clicked on is already selected here. So I right-clicked in this area, so that's why this area is highlighted here in this code, and also you can see that it's highlighted on the page, right? So if I right-click on this item, for example, and do inspect, it will show here, right? And it will be highlighted. Or you can also click on this icon here, this button, and just select items. You can see that the area under my cursor gets highlighted, so I know what I'm going to select, right? And this is actually the most convenient way of selecting items and actually deciding or targeting the items that you want to work with. So so we want to look at this menu, right? So this is the menu area. Okay. And if you look here, let me just click on that so that it remains selected here. Okay. So you can see that this is an unordered list UL, right? Because it is a list which is part of the menu, which is inside this div container, but you can also see this nav, which is the navigation container. But I think if we target the list, you can see the menu items as well, right? But you can see that this has this ID of main nav. So we might try to target this. And changing the font size a little bit. So making it a little bit smaller so that it perhaps becomes aligned in one line, right? So that's ID of main hyphen nav. So if we remember that, we can go to customize, additional CSS, and in the CSS, the symbol for ID, because we have IDs and classes in CSS. So ID is like a unique ID for a given element. So this particular list has this unique ID. So this is indicated with this hash symbol. And after that, we type the name of this ID. So that was called main nav. And of course, according to the rules of CSS, we open those curly brackets. And actually there is some help in this editor. You can see that those brackets have been automatically closed. You can see some highlighting of the starting and ending brackets. So there are some features, some more advanced features in this little editor. And we can target, or we can define the font size. We also have suggestions here. So the font size property, and let's set it to 90%. Okay, so it has become a bit smaller. And let's see if that will help. Of course, it hasn't helped yet, but the window is not full size. Right, so that's worked in this case, right? So sometimes you might use that additional CSS option, this additional CSS editor, to actually add your own CSS by modifying elements on the page if something doesn't quite work correctly. Okay, so we've got our menu. Let's see if it works. So when I click on HTML, we've got our HTML page. CSS, domain and hosting, and the contact page, which is currently empty. Right? We also have this area here, which in this theme is called header slider, I think. So we've got some header slider options here. And the strange thing is, and I think this is something, again, something that doesn't quite work on this in this theme, because we've got these options. Show header on homepage, yes, right? So if I go to the homepage, it shows up here. And then we have the rest of the text. We also have this area. Show header on single post page, so we don't have any posts. But then we have show header on pages, so on these other pages apart from the home page. And the selected option is no. But you can see if I click on HTML, okay, so it seems that it doesn't show. But when I close this, it shows up again. So there's a problem because it shouldn't be showing here. It shouldn't be showing on these other pages except the home page. So that's another problem here with this theme. Of course, we could think of a workaround. Maybe we could use this additional CSS to get rid of that header area. But we're not going to worry about that now because we want to deal with other things. So unfortunately, some themes will have some issues, and you will either just change the theme, or you will try to find a workaround, basically. So if we look at that header slider section, it says here that you can change this text in Slider 1 Settings tab of the theme options page. Right, so we are in the Slider 1 Settings. It says Slider 1, right? Okay, so we have header 1 settings here. Right, so it's actually header 1, not Slider 1. So we can start typing. And you can see that it changes, the text changes here. And then we can also change this feature text. So that's the text that actually gave us the explanations. Using WordPress, to create responsive business websites, for example. Call to action text, so we can change the text on this button, and then we can have, right, so I've actually, that's from a previous attempt, start with HTML, and you can have a link to the page. So it can be a page on your website or some external page. But of course here, since we're introducing our website, we should probably start with something that our website has to offer. Right, so we can just basically copy the address of the page we're interested in. Right, so I could right click on that and just copy link address and paste it here. And it hasn't worked because, well, let's see. Because we have this, we are in this customize mode. So all these items behave slightly differently. But I think this address is here somewhere. Right, so this should be the address. So let's try and publish this. Okay, so we have the link here, and it takes us to the HTML page. So if we scroll down, we have these pages, but if we or we have the content of the page, but if we go to the home page, by default we have these areas, right? And we also have some instructions. So you can change this text in description box of that section block in Biz 1 tab and so on. So again, we have these items in the customize menu created by the theme where we can actually work with these elements. And we can even edit this quote separately. So let's go to customize again. So we should look for the Biz1 tab, Business One. So it's B1 here, B1 settings, I think. Okay, and we have B1 left settings, B1 center settings, and B1 right settings. So these are these settings for these individual elements. So this theme is very specific. It targets all these individual elements. So it's not extremely flexible because it basically gives us this layout that we can't do much about except just customize all these details. But the advantage is that we have a ready template that we can work with, and basically we have our website created and we just need to change the content and change some graphics and so on. So for the left one, so we'll change the headline. So of course we can change that to, for example, HTML, and we can have this welcome text, which I'm going to leave as is because or let's just have one sentence there. So let's search for HTML again, and let's just have this sentence here. Okay, and you can see that it appears here. We can also have a link, so when we click on that, of course we want to go to that page that we previously copied. We copied the address of that page. So again, we need to, let me just copy the address, this part of the address, and slash HTML. So this will be the link. Okay, I can publish. Okay, then we have development. So this is the Biz1 or Business One center settings. So this will be CSS, for example, and we can have some short text. Okay, that looks good. And we can paste this. Okay, we need to copy. Okay, and CSS and publish. Okay, and finally let's have on the right, let's have WordPress for a change. Right, so we have this text here, and for the link we would need to create a page, basically. Called WordPress. It doesn't exist yet, but let's just put it there. Okay, so this is our website for now. Of course, we would also need to change these images. So let's do that. And actually we can use the images that we've used for the individual pages. So we can select the image here. Right. It's not quite centered. And there aren't any options for centering here. So we would probably need an image that was basically square, perhaps. Okay, so as I said, there isn't much flexibility in this theme. I mean, there are a lot of settings, but they are related to these individual fixed items. Right, so that doesn't look perfect. We can't scale it either. Yeah, so we would need to prepare images with similar dimensions and similar aspect ratio so that they look consistent here. Okay, and let's find an image for WordPress. Yeah, I think this one should be fine, although it looks like it's either very it's very compressed. You can see these artifacts. Let's try something else, perhaps. (300 by 300). That might be too small. And we would want, ideally, we would want an image with a transparent background. Right, this one has a transparent background. You can see this checker pattern in the background. So let's select it. And it's actually from WordPress.org. It comes from that website. So I'm going to just open image in new tab. Okay, so that's the PNG. It's quite large. Save as. Okay. And I'm going to open that inside of GIMP. And let's crop to content. So this is the actual size, so that's a little too big. Okay, and we might want to make it a blue color. That will, of course, cover everything. So I can use this option here in layers. So if you've ever worked with Photoshop, it has similar, well, most applications like that have layers. So here you can select, you have this option alpha to selection. So basically that means the area that is not transparent will be selected. And you can see that it works. And now I can drag the color. Okay, maybe it's too bright or too saturated. Let's have something more subtle. Okay. I can deselect everything, and it doesn't look brilliant with that background, but it should look better on a bright background. So I'm going to overwrite this previous file. And then I can go back to my site and go to B1 Write settings, select an image, upload a file, and we have this WordPress logo here. You can choose it. Right, so it doesn't look very consistent here, but it will do for now. Okay, so let's add that contact form. So that's something we did last week. Of course, we need, well, first we need to publish our changes. And then I'm going to go back to the dashboard here. And we need to install the plugin, because if I click installed plugins here, you can see that no plugins are installed at the moment. So let's add a new plugin. And the plugin was called WP Forms. And this is the plugin, so we can install it. We can activate it. And it's activated now. So you can also watch this introductory video. Right, there is a pro version as usual. Okay, so now this item has appeared, WP Forms, where you have the settings for the forms. We also have an item here with a few options. Of course, we are most interested in adding a new form. So we have this option here. I think we also have that option here. We can also add it from the website page when we're logged in. So let's add a new form. And we've got these templates. So previously we used this simple contact form template. So we're going to use it again because that's what we want. We want a contact form. Okay, so we have the name, and if we don't want to request both the first and the last name, but just leave it up to the user, of course we can change this. So when I click on this, you have the format. So we want the simple format. We've got the email and we've got the comment or message, and that's all that you normally need in a contact form. But just to see what options there are in this tool, you can see that you can actually do quite an advanced form, right? You can have this reCAPTCHA tool. So let's try that. It isn't configured yet. Okay, we would need to configure that. So we won't bother with that now. But basically, it's this tool which allows to check whether it's a human. It's a human being that's trying to contact us and not a bot. So the user needs to type in some text, for example. Right, but we also have things like drop down, checkboxes, multiple choice. So we could actually create a kind of a quiz or a survey with this tool, right? So we could, for example, add a multiple choice question here. This is perhaps not the best place to put it because we wouldn't want to bother visitors who want to contact us with some multiple choices. But in some scenarios, you can imagine that you might want to have some kind of quiz or survey for users to take. So for example, you could ask, how do you rate this website? right? And you could have 3 options. Excellent. Then you could have average and poor, for example, right? And then we have this form. So this feedback should be sent to us together with the message. So this can be quite useful in many situations. So of course we need to save the form here, and we need this code, which previously we copied from this WordPress admin area. But here you've got this embed code. So that's the code that we need to copy. And of course, all we need to do is to just paste this on that page or onto that page. So let's go to the website and let's go to contact. So let's go to that page, right? So we're here, and you can edit. You can click edit page, or even here you can click on edit, and here you can add content. So here, of course, we want to just paste that code. So we won't see anything until we actually preview or update the page and actually view the page. Right, so you can see that we have these fields. We also have this form that the user can, not a form, this multiple choice question, which the user can, where the user can select one of the options, right, and then submit. Also remember that, of course, this will be sent to the email that you've set up for your WordPress installation. So you have to go to settings and general. So this is the email. It actually used my Gmail address, but I could change this to, for example, my Camilo address. So if I wanted those messages to arrive in this particular inbox, then I would type it here. Right, so of course we need to save the changes. And we're done. Of course, don't forget that you've got all these settings here that you can change. So if you don't like the date format or the time format, for example, I prefer this full time format, 24-hour format. Yes, so you can customize all these settings. You can also change the time zone, for example, to Warsaw. So actually we can select cities here, because in the previous installation, if you remember, we had to specify this, the UTC time. So we had to specify how many hours we have to add or subtract. But here we can just select the city and that's okay. For some reason, this email address hasn't been changed. Let's try again. Okay, of course you need to confirm. So you will receive that address in your inbox, and then you need to confirm. So it will become active after it's confirmed. Right, this is pending change of the email, of the admin email to this address. So that's something that you have to be aware of. Okay, so there's one more thing I would like to mention. So if we go back to this main, to our website, and we click on Customize again, you've got all these menus here, but at the bottom you can see that you've got these three icons. So what do they do? So this is the default, it's underlined, it's selected. This is the desktop view. So this is the website as it would look on a computer, on a desktop computer or a laptop. The next one is the typical tablet size, because these WordPress websites, at least most of them, are responsive, which means that they will change a little bit depending on the kind of device you use them on, or you view them on, right? So obviously the same website will look differently on a phone, as you can actually see here in this picture, because of the screen size and the screen orientation, right? So this is called responsive web design, where depending on the number of pixels horizontally, the layout of the website will change. So this is defined in the CSS. So when we click on this one, for example, this is what it would look like on a tablet, right? Of course, we would have no scroll bar, but we would just use the finger. But that's what it would look like. So the layout is slightly different, as you can see. Most of these items are stacked vertically, right? And if you click on the mobile or the phone view, it's actually pretty similar, but it's just narrower. But very often the tablet view will differ from a mobile view. So for example, in the full desktop view, you might have, let's say, 4 columns. In the tablet view, you might have 2 columns. And in the phone view, you might have just 1 column. So you will just scroll down and view the content horizontally. So all the items will be stacked vertically. You can see that the layout changes because, for example, the menu here is on the right. Of course, it doesn't look good because we have this panel here, but this is the layout, right? And you can see you've got these 3 items in separate columns. But if we switch to the mobile view, the menu is actually a drop-down menu, right? So you can actually have a totally different layout, or things can look quite different depending on the device that the page is displayed on. If I go to the tablet view, we also have this drop-down menu, right? So the user would need to touch this menu widget and then select from this drop-down menu, which is perhaps a strange choice for a touch device, because it's not very convenient to select items from a drop-down menu by using a finger. But that's the choice made here. But this just shows that you can structure your page differently depending on the device type. Okay, so that's it for today. Next week we will install a plugin called Elementor, which allows you to have a lot more control over your pages, and which is also much more fun and much more flexible to work with. And we will also talk about some extra functionality related to business.